back to the Berg podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And we're continuing our conversation from the last episode. And we're talking about like the what ifs, like the what comes next, and a little bit in projecting and hypotheticals. But we think that it's quite possible that things could look different, very different.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those like futuristic Star Trek-y type thing in the reality too, because things don't move as fast as they project that they will, you know, unless you're in California, where they just magically outlawed all gas mowers. But everywhere else, things move a little slower. Like the leaders of the country, the leaders of thought leaders, they move fast. They have these projections that are going to magically happen overnight. But you know, they want to get away from fuel. That sounds really good in a conversation because of what it supposedly does to our Earth. But logistically, that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
Because you actually have to make it happen. I just read a report. There's a lot of electric vehicles out there that aren't being sold because there are challenges. The big trucks that they were trying to take the tractor trailers and make them into electric, they only go half as far. They cost twice as much. And because they're so heavy, they can't haul as much of a load. Mm-hmm. So the thought, while good or bad, are irrelevant. But how to get there is the actual piece that matters. So, you know, we go to these shows like Con Expo and they show us these magical piece of equipment that run on their own, or they have that like dog from, what was it, Top Con or somebody, like the rover that's like literally like a little animal.
Yeah, it looks like a little dog, yeah.
Yeah, and like that one piece might work well because it's a prototype, but it's not going to magically happen overnight. That's the same thing with the AI. All this stuff, like it's jumping ahead a little too far. So, you know, the BIM stuff, the AI stuff, it might be able to draw the prints faster and it might be able to show you what the finished product is going to look like and how it's going to get there, but it's still going to take boots on the ground. It's still going to take getting dirty, getting muddy, you know, long hours at times and all those things to make it happen. It's not going to magically appear overnight.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is like a pooling of resources, right? And it takes the greatest libraries available, something that is really interesting to me because, you know, you look at the way AI works, and AI is like the culmination of information being projected into something new. And it's not necessarily like an invention of something new. It's saying like, here are like the millions of ways like a sentence could have been formulated. And now I'm going to express that thought based on what I've gathered to understand the circumstances. And so I think like AI and BIM, things of that nature, like should free up time for humans to do more actual creation and invention, because I believe that they'll take the grunt work, some of the like you're saying, like the amount of time it would take to create a set of plans could decrease significantly, because if you have enough of the information, you know, AI can generate the basis of those thoughts pretty quickly, but it doesn't necessarily create like a new idea that has never existed before. So I do think that it is interesting to think about, like, you look at like invention and human beings in general, and the amazing things that have happened over the last 100 years. And a lot of it was because people had the capacity and time to do it. And now if you take people and you burden them with the day-to-day of being in the actual, like having to do the thing and not necessarily the creating and the inventing, has that slowed down? And maybe AI is part of that solution.
Yeah, so the interesting thing to me is, and I take like a slightly different angle, and it's why the concern I have. And it's that I would argue that almost everything we've invented, and you have to stop saying 100 years, not you, Brian. Like we have to stop saying it because it's 2024. So now the car was invented more than 100 years ago, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that we think like just got, like it happened in the last 100 years that we're older now and it's not 100 years anymore. But when you think about that, it was necessity. It was that they needed something.
The mother of all inventions.
The mother of all inventions is necessity. And so that's one of my fears is and when you said like it takes away the grunt work, like I have real concerns that as AI begins to take the information that we know to exist and process it, and even if I believed it could develop the plans as good and faster, well, just because someone knew how to do it, and now the computer has the data and the processing power to know how to do it, does not mean we know how to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And so I have real concerns that as we go into this, you may see a gain, then you may see a significant loss because we're going to, if right now we think there is a shortage of skilled labor because people don't know how to weld and they don't know how to be a pipe fitter and they don't know how to be an electrician or a plumber or a metal fabricator or woodworker. Well, if all these computers can do the things that these people could do because we teach them how to do it based on the knowledge that those people had, you, in some odd way, you silo the information more and more to anyone who could actually do it. And that's concerning, from that sense. Where I think that technology will really explode in the next however many years, 50 years, is will it get to a point, I would hope we could get to a point where when we go to build something, the computers have had the time, because they can use it so much more efficiently, to see the problem, right? Like right now, all our engineer friends can be unhappy with me, but I feel like you used to get a 90% drawing that was pretty close. And now I get a drawing that says ready for construction 90%. It is not 90%. There are varying degrees of how good they are based on where they came from and who drew them. But at times, the people don't even realize, whether it be the operator, the foreman, the engineer, the CQA, whoever it is, don't realize the plan is wrong until something happens. The best of our people know that it's wrong. They look at the print and they say, this is not going to work. And, one of the examples that sticks in my head was a landfill job where we were sitting looking at the prints and they said they worked. And our people kept saying, right, but the hill is right behind us. Let's just go drive out there and you'll see that it doesn't work. And they were like, no, it works. Right here, you can see it works. They were having an actual argument about that it worked because their piece of paper that they drew said it worked. But we had the field that you could measure it and know that it did not work. And it took a lot, and eventually they had to accept that it didn't work. Similarly on another project, I was talking with all the PMs yesterday, we were talking about it, about what we believed to be a bust that had to exist on a job before we ever started it. It's the only reasonable explanation was that the prints were entirely wrong. Something was wrong. It's the only way to explain why there's so much extra dirt, because everything is where it is supposed to be. The drawing says it's right. The only way it can be wrong is if the given that you started with was wrong and nobody noticed it. And that becomes my concern, is when you have AI doing it. Like AI can have all that information, but if the data you put in is wrong, everything coming out is going to be wrong.
Doesn't have boots on the ground.
And if you don't have boots on the ground, you're not going to know it's wrong.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. And when I say it takes away the grunt work, I meant more like the entry points.
Yes.
The data. So not necessarily it takes away the thinking, but yeah.
But that's a challenge we deal with in our industry, is that, most guys start with a laser stick in their hand, right? Yeah. So they learn what grades are. Then when they become an operator, that base knowledge is there. But if we used GPS, they follow the instruction and they don't know if it's right or wrong because that base knowledge is gone. Two stories. One is they just said the other day, someone's like, we need less philosophers and more welders. And the guy's like, no, that's not what we're saying. He's like, I want a welder that can talk about Nietzsche and all these like things. Like what we're really looking for, and I think what we're starting to see a tide change, well-rounded people They can have a conversation about multiple things. What our world has done is silo us all into such specific niches that we can't be as broad of an understanding. I don't like the opera, but but people just go into their whatever they like. They find a group of people that like the exact same things, and they never broaden their horizons past that point. So they just don't have anything besides the things that they have. Maybe it's sports, but if you just watch sports and don't know about the world news or stuff else is going on, it's broadening the horizons, which is really important. So whether the person is a doctor or the person is a welder or an excavator operator or whatever it might be, if they're so focused on such a small point in the future, they don't get to see what's around them. And that's what, in general, we're seeing some of this education transition. There's actually more 4-year schools are down, the trade schools are up. It's not an either or. Like, we need both is the problem. We've had swung a little too far one way, so we didn't have the skilled laborers. There's still huge numbers of people that are needed in our industry, but it's more about having people that are not just focused on one thing, but they have a broad horizon and they can maybe do stuff for themselves. That's why I'm such a big fan, at least right now, of the service industries, because so many people might know how to draw a set of prints, but they don't know how to change their light bulb. They don't know how to change their oil in their car. They don't know how to make dinner because all they do is focus on that one particular thing. The other thing you said about necessity, invention. So there's a story, everybody knows it, but I just always love hearing about it is, old ice houses back in the day before they had refrigerators. They had them pop up around because you had to go get your ice to keep your food cool. Well, then GE invents the refrigerator. But there's one company that what he was doing was he realized that since he had the ice house, he was starting to keep fruits and vegetables and stuff cold in the ice house. He named his place based on his hours of operation from 7 to 11.
Mm-hmm.
So he took an ice house and just kept adapting it until he's I think he's the biggest chain of convenience stores at this point in the United States, but it was just an adaptation. You're just constantly adapting and changing a little bit. If he would have just been, I'm an ice house, oh no, GE put me out of business and, wah, wah, wah. Yeah. But no, he just was kept moving with the market until what it is. So that's part of the fun part for thinking 20 years out is like, okay, not just what the equipment is, what is the team makeup?
Right.
What can we as a company do to make it the best we can for our team? In the short term, we want to be a quality service provider. We want to have good, high quality equipment, good, high quality team members, do great jobs. Like, that's the basics. But what we will be doing, who knows? We talked about infrastructure. One of the biggest challenges, a lot of our underground infrastructure is very, very old, way too old. But nobody cares about it because it's underground until it's a problem.
Until it breaks.
Right. Our road system, especially in Pennsylvania, I think our bridges are like a D- is the rating of all of our bridges in the United States, or Pennsylvania alone, just, United States in general. But that stuff's going to keep doing because they can't make changes to it. They can't make it wider. They can't make it bigger in some places because they're hemmed in by different things. So we'll just keep refixing things, adjusting things, especially in this market. I think there's going to be a lot of revitalization of existing structures because the cost of construction is so high that we're going to be reusing or changing the use of things more than ever before. Because if there's a building there, it might not be what the person wants, but it'll work a lot better to make a couple minor changes than ripping it down and starting from scratch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you talk about like having to adapt the 7-Eleven story. What do you think those adaptations could look like for Berg Construction?
Our market access, our where we work at might change. What the team makeup is, the type of equipment we will use will probably change. So all those things, all those pieces are variables, and so when you put them all together, you'll have what it'll be, but which pieces will move first is the question of the day.
Yeah, we talked a little bit in the last podcast about the construction industry being stubborn, right? And we've mentioned it here on the podcast before. And I think, Dan, it might have been in the podcast you and I talked about, where you talked about, like, from an estimating perspective, some guys will still use the same, unit pricing for things that, 10 years ago, maybe even longer. And that, like, that mindset, like, well, this is the way it gets done, or this is the way that this is how much it costs to do it. And that can't change. Right. And so what has changed is sometimes the speed of which we do things, the type of processes used to do things, how many people do those things. I haven't been in construction that long. I haven't seen, like, tremendous changes in my mind in the equipment, with the exceptions of some of the automation, some of the GPS. I know that some of the new technology that allows for things like remote work, et cetera. But, like, what do you think that looks like? Like, will the machines inherently look different? Are we not? Are we in the iPhone stages where we're getting the software updates, but not the new machine?
Well, I think, from my perspective, I think the first place you're really going to see change, that it's easy to see it, is in the estimation, right? Is in the estimation and project management. It is pretty easy to see that a world in which I don't have to read the 500-page spec book, right? Because the AI just
it'll be read, but just not by you.
But it'll feed me the information of where the deltas are based on parameters that I guess I would set on what deltas I need to see, what the tolerances are. Where it gets trickier is the equipment and the people. I mean, from just a logical standpoint, at some point it will stop making sense to put people in trenches that are more than a certain depth, right? Like, more than
that's where, unfortunately, a lot of the incidents are. That's
where the biggest risk is. Like, right, that's why mining has changed. And you see automation in mining. So you can see that. But I start to think about the Mercedes-Benz idea. I'd heard something that Mercedes has redesigned the car, and it doesn't look like a car anymore. Because in the future, if you don't drive it, what do you need a windshield for? Why are we all facing the same direction? Like, why wouldn't we sit around a kitchen table in a thing that's moving? Like, in other words, you know what I mean? Almost like if you picture like a teleporter, like, why would I do that? Why wouldn't we sit like this and just go to Ohio? Like, why would we all face the same direction and not be able to talk to each other? You know what I mean? So from an equipment standpoint, if you were to automate stuff, right now we automate them and it looks almost identical to the regular machine, which makes no sense because you don't need the operator, you don't need the controls, but it's because we haven't made that leap yet. It's still just an excavator that we automated.
Right. It's an adaptation of the thing.
It's an adaptation of the thing. I mean, I would assume, would an excavator have to be that big? Like, if you really start to think, like, in your thinking when we started it, like, try and think of what the future would be. Well, you could use a small excavator. Like, if you wanted to dig a 4-foot wide trench, you could probably dig it with an excavator that was only 6 or 8 foot wide, assuming all the excavator had to do was pick up the dirt and put it on some sort of a conveyor system that moves the dirt out. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, it could completely change what it looks like. I just find it hard to believe that it happens in my lifetime. Like, right. As stubborn as we've been to every change, because construction is stubborn and because it's just hard work. And you have to, at the end of the day, you have to know how to do it. And unless someone figures out how to accurately project exactly what's in the ground and the conditions you're going to hit, there's too many variables. So then you need people to make a decision on what to do to make it work.
Well, you were talking about that last episode about, like, kind of like the basketball analogies have changed different than you said, like, our operators versus operators 100 years ago and stuff like that, but in theory, 100 years ago, based on data or reading books, they were in the wide open area, so they could do whatever they wanted. Now our guys, we talked to even guys from 30 years ago. Oh, we put this many foot of pipe in the ground and, we're just rolling and rolling and rolling. Okay, do that in an existing territory. Every 5 foot you find something you shouldn't be there. Every 6 feet you find this, or, it looks like spaghetti underground because of all the different utilities that have been there for years, or someone forgot about them because they abandoned them and that kind of thing. Whereas if you're just hogging and going in a big field and there's nothing there, you can move that production to the speed that you expect. I think right now where we're going is a lot more multi-tool stuff, a lot more one size fits all versus the attachment game has been much stronger in the last couple of years. New attachments, new styles of attachments. You know, we're unfortunately in the early adaptation stage of that. So a lot of things are maybe not working what they envisioned them to yet. We're still not fully done that. But I think you might have one machine that does 20 things compared to having 10 machines on that job site. I think that's because really invention follows the dollars. If something is going to make someone more productive, you would spend money on it. If it's not going to make it any better, you're not going to spend any more money on that. So it has to show a clear benefit in order for someone to be interested in making that change.
Yeah, and when you talk about the 100-year thing, or whatever that period is, you go back and
we did it again. We're supposed to say 150,
150, 200 years, whatever it is. But I've thought a bunch of times when you just get into your car right now, and I think, could the men who built the cars originally, the first of the cars, you know what I mean, whether it be with Mercedes or Ford or the Dodge brothers, if you could teleport them to this time and put them in your car, could they start the car? Because the car, could they get in?
Doesn't have a hand crank.
Well, I mean, but even in a simple sense, you have Teslas or other things, and where you don't have the door handles visible. Yeah. Could they even get in the car? It doesn't have a crank to put down the window. How would they? I mean, they were intelligent guys. I'm sure they should figure it out. But the thing is so much different. You know what I mean? And so those changes have happened. You know what I mean? But it is tricky to think about what it'll be, because immediately our first step is always we go to the idea of a robot, or now not even a robot, just that the built-in intelligence that's housed somewhere else that can do the thing.
I think one thing that'll happen.
So many steps away, don't you think?
I think one thing that'll happen sooner than later will be video of all job sites. I think in 5 years or so, we will have a bank of TV monitors that allow us to be in communication with our teams because of the scatteredness of them.
And what's the driver there, do you think? What comes to mind is this an insurance driver? Is this I
think it's a fuel driver.
Okay. You think it's energy consumption?
Energy consumption. Because if we could set up cameras on a job site and not have to have as much transportation back and forth, and still be able to deal with problems and things of that nature. I mean, think about it now. My dad's done it to me a couple of times where he's on a job and he has a question. He'll FaceTime me and I can actually see it. And, we could talk through it more versus him just verbally explaining it to me, and I might not get it. But he's like, hey, look at this, whatever, with the iPhone or the iPad. But if you can have a good camera system up there, it helps the team. It makes sure that they can, hey, over in this sector, whatever. I mean, because the mines already do it. A lot of stuff that we do comes from mines, but it's adapted to the type of work that we do. Not like those guys automated stuff, blah, 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 because they're always in front of the system. But, the equipment zones, all that kind of stuff, I think we will have pictures on a live basis. I mean, they do it now for one camera in a corner, and then you can speed it up and see the job that in 3 minutes a building's built. They do some of that stuff more for advertising, but I think we will have a real-time monitoring of the site to help the team be able to be as productive as possible, to help with planning. Because not just the guy on the site, but you'll have a 30,000 foot view of hey, I saw you got to manhole number 6 today. We have manhole 7, 8, and 9 here, but it looks like you're moving faster. So we'll order the next products. It'll help the project management. It'll go smoother. The clients will be able to see it. So they'll be able to see the production. They'll be able to see where the challenges are, and it'll help that communication. Because we always talk about construction has a very adversarial undertone to it. But if everybody's watching it and sees that there's a problem there, it's much more challenging to not understand what's going on, because usually owners are not local. Engineers might be local, might not be. There's not people, but if everybody's looking at the same thing, it's very difficult to have multiple interpretations of the same problem.
Interesting.
So it's interesting that if you're saying in 5 years you think there'd be cameras there everywhere running on things, which is a little bit scary because where else are cameras? But if we stay on construction topic, that if that's in 5 years, then I can't see it being more than 20 years until there's cameras in the machine and the person operating is not sitting in the machine. Because if you've got the cameras, that means you have.
It already happens in the mines.
It already happens in mines, but for it to translate out, right? The difference in my perception, and we've talked about this with the mines, is they're replicating a certain thing in an enclosed environment. In other words, they're not working inside the city of Philadelphia in a city block where maybe people parked their cars. Maybe they moved. You don't know what's in the ground. There's tons of utilities. For the most part, they're working in an area that is more dangerous, but more predictable in what they're encountering and what their process is. So the unpredictability of the nature of our work working in this environment, especially in Southeast PA, makes it harder to envision this happening. But my point is just if in 5 years there's cameras and everything, in 20 years people aren't sitting in equipment anymore. It doesn't mean they're not running it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you talked about necessity being the mother of invention, but then ultimately efficiency driving what decisions you make. Well, in my mind, and this is fresh in my mind, but if you have a guy running a backhoe with a sweeper on it to clean up on a site, but he only needs to run 2 hours a day, well, you could still have all 5 backhoes, but one guy could do that, you know what I mean, and only work 8 or 10 hours and have done the work on all the sites, and it was one guy. And who says he had to come to work to do it, right? Like, I don't love it, but we've talked about this, I think, on the podcast before, that I was at a party one time with a banker, and he said one of the big concerns is what happens in the post-work era when people don't physically work anymore. And I just get completely out of sorts when we start down that road, because I don't see how it happens. And if nobody has to work, I think you can end up in even a bigger disarray than we already are as a society. But
I think like that, I've always thought that too. And then it's like when the trains came, people are like, oh my goodness. And what happens to stagecoaches? Again, it's just an invention of something new. I don't think the repair, I don't think the utility, but my thought is, so say that sinkhole that we had another couple months ago, right? We were working on. If our light plants had cameras in the light plant, and they take the light plants down there at 2:00 in the morning when the emergency call came in and we showed up, the client in Texas or whatever, the engineer, you guys get on a phone call and you don't have to describe it and try and explain it to them. It's like, here's what's happening. Here's our remedy to fix it. In the existing area where it's existing, I don't think the 20-year thing now, I'm not saying if you're in the middle of Texas in a farm field and you're building new houses, it might not be that way, but up here in the Northeast, there's just too much going on under there. Yeah. But if you could have 3 shots on a problem, constantly happening, the guy's in the field walking around pointing to things because he's got an earbud in, he's in the conversation too. The meeting of the minds and the group being able to come up with a solution to the problem is going to be worth whatever the cost of additional infrastructure is.
Yeah. You almost would not want the cameras on like fixed things, right? You almost wouldn't want them on the light towers. You would want them on hard hats
or drones flying around the whole time or whatever.
Equipment. Yeah. Because I'm even thinking like, all right, maybe the equipment could show you one perspective, but the laborer or the foreman or somebody on the ground might be actually like the point of view potentially that you're looking for. Yeah. Interesting. Almost
like our dynamic subordination idea where whoever's, the most appropriate, but that the camera would, you'd switch like you see, you know what I mean? The perspective would switch based on who had the
think about the video game.
Yeah.
Move to player X4's, like if you think about the video games now and you can like play whatever those was it first person games? I don't play video games, but whatever.
We're going into a dangerous territory. None of us play video games. Right. You don't, right, Brian?
I don't know.
But the screen, like I've watched people do it, and the screen switches based on who is there.
Yeah, sports works better for us. Like when you're watching a game, camera angles just change over and over again based on what you want to see.
Yeah. So I think that'd be a short-term thing.
Safety glasses. Maybe you put the...
Yeah. Well, they tried those cameras for a while, and people got a little...
well, understandably, I don't know if I want someone necessarily always seeing what I'm seeing. Right. I get some of the privacy concerns there.
But I think that's an interesting conversation, because, people, as we've made these huge adjustments in the last 10 years and people are like, oh no, whatever. Yeah. And then, but like, they don't realize it's already happened. They just aren't aware that it's happening. Like, what did I do something the other day? And then my phone was showing me the ad for it, and I don't even have the GPS location. You know, like people are like,
Sure.
oh, know where you are, like this whole thing. And you know,
You
go to
360. Or
you go to Philadelphia, and I bet you're on 100 cameras you can't even see because
yeah.
Everything
cops-
you walk past is
Yes.
being filmed. Yeah.
So like,
Mhm.
I mean, I appreciate the idea, and you know, I might be a little bit on that side as far as the privacy thing, but I think we have to be realistic on what is happening, and you know, we're on more stuff than we think we are. And then I go to the other side. It's kind of like with credit cards or whatever. People are like, oh, you know, like might get hacked. Yeah, there's a very large chance of that happening. But if you're in a mass of people, is it like if there's that much data and that much cameras out there, unless you're really doing something wrong, is anyone even going to really notice you? Because there's so much data, you're not going to stick out. It's not like there's one camera that you walk by. If I walk down to the center city, Philadelphia, I'm one of 20,000 people walking that street that day. Unless I'm doing something really odd, no one's even going to know. You know what I mean? You just become part of the
mass.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
part of the
you know,
backdrop.
and we've talked about that when people, you know, like you don't have the GPS locator on your phone, or I've heard people say like, well, I don't want to be tracked. It was like, if you don't think that whoever they are, they already, if people wanted to know where you were, you're carrying a computer, they'd find it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think about it too, from when you see, you know, we've had, Philly's had a rash of people escaping out of various levels of being in captivity
Detained.
from prison or
Yeah,
in the cop
incarceration,
cars or
yeah.
wherever else. But and the speed with which they can locate, they don't find him necessarily quickly. But in the city versus like Cavalcante, it took forever. They all knew where he was. He was on one of 3 farms and running around in a circle. But you got to find the guy in the woods. That's not so easy.
Sure.
But in Philly, they're like, yeah, here they are covering him. You know, the guy was like in a different outfit, covered in a hood with 3 people around him. And they're like, that's definitely him, because they could see like a corner of his shoe, because there was so many camera angles for them to pivot. And the guy only walked, I mean, in a row home in Philly, it's 12 foot from the door to the sidewalk. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, Cavalcante is running around in broad daylight. Nobody can find him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just the level of cameras. It's a good point. It already exists. So
Well, the cameras caught him too, right? Though, like it was
Yeah.
like trail cams or something.
the trail cams
Yeah.
got him,
Yeah.
and then he stole the guy's shoes.
Well, I think about that. You just get back to them. Like I got a bunch of buddies that are hunters, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of bust their chops a little bit because they all have trail cams up, and now like not just they have a trail cam up, but it's like wired to their phone, and like they're like getting alerts
getting
and stuff
the
like
alerts,
that. And I'm like, all right, is that really hunting? Like, I mean, come on, this is like a mono thing, and now we're using the tech. You're using what's in front of you. I appreciate that, but like, this isn't like you going out in moccasins with like a bow trying to like find your way
There
through
it
the
is
woods,
for you.
right? This is a
Yeah,
different
it's-
setup.
I've said that a long time about hunting.
Yeah.
I mean, I listen. I've never.
But I mean, they're putting tree.
don't
You go out into a nature
Yeah.
forest,
I have-
thinking you're in
yeah.
no man's land. You just walking down a trail, and all of a sudden, there's 3 pictures of you taken. You'll never even know about because someone has a trail cam on you.
I have a good buddy who I don't hunt, but I'm the beneficiary of a good friend who does quite a bit of hunting, and usually gives us some meat for our freezer, and it's awesome.
Like goose jerky.
Yeah, that goose jerky is amazing. Yeah, that's the first time I had that. I chirped at my brother. My brother does a lot of waterfowl hunting. Never given me goose jerky. I was like, I didn't even know this was a thing until like 2 hours ago. Gal in the office, her husband gave us some. But anyways, like some of it, what my buddy does, he is the trail cams and stuff like that. But honestly, it's like he's like a full-time analyst, right? Like he is like studying whatever it is he's hunting. He doesn't. I mean, I think there's a lot of luck in some of that, but he's left a little up to luck. He is very well prepared, and
He's got logs of what goes past it,
Very
at what time
patient.
of the day, and all that
spends
stuff.
a lot of time
Yeah.
scouting the areas, and yeah. So the joy he gets is
The time out there.
the time out there and introducing people to it. So like he takes nieces and nephews and helps them like understand how to be safe about it, what to look for, and then sharing, right? So like for us, we lift together in the mornings, and he's always like, you're the next one, I got you on the list, and he looks forward to that, so which is really cool. But yeah, you guys are actually, I think you guys are like milder, and maybe it's because of my in my lack of exposure for as long as you guys have been in construction. Because like when I start thinking about like, oh, what does 20 years look like, I get like all Jetsons about it, right? I'm like, man, we're gonna start putting hose on the front of dozers, and like, I don't know. I do like the idea that you said, like, why in if futuristic projections of what vehicles look like, why do we still have a driver? Like, why did someone still?
Well, I mean, like take the Jetsons, right? And I love the Jetsons as a kid,
right.
But he was still driving the car. His car could fly.
Just because it could fly.
Knew where he was going, but everyone still faced forward, and he had to steer it.
Yeah.
So the car knew how to, you know what I mean? Like it was just one of those
there
things.
was still traffic too.
There was
Why
still
was
traffic.
Still traffic?
Yeah. Well, then he went to a different height, and your house would go up and down. But they weren't wrong on a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But your view of what that looks like is so different when you actually get there. And that's where, I mean, like the driving thing is a really good example, because I mean, GPS at the end of the day, you needed a lot of other things. But once you had something that actively knew how fast you should go, where you were going, and where the road was, and could tell you if you were in or out of the lane, the car could basically drive itself, which is, you know, for me, terrifying that I would have to be in a car that no one's in control of except a computer that I don't know where it is, and I hope we don't hit anything. Right? It's like being on an amusement ride that I don't like. And but then it's also, I don't see any other way it goes. Like, in other words, because you could stop. They've talked about, you know, we weren't talking about it on the podcast, but we started talking about the Schuylkill and how they know they have to redesign it, but there's nowhere to go, and what does that look like, and all those things. But they do know that if you just controlled the speed of traffic effectively on the Schuylkill, you could reduce the traffic. There's some ridiculous stat by like 70%. If everybody just drove at the same speed limit and didn't touch their brakes, because in Pennsylvania, as part of your driving test, you have to learn how to hammer your brakes anytime a highway turns. I don't know why they teach you guys that, but if the highway turns, you better hit your brakes hard.
Yeah.
But in a serious sense, like if everybody just drove at a reasonable speed based on the level of congestion, at least you wouldn't have to stop. And I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody, because I'm going to switch lanes. I'm not going to sit there. I'm like, this lane's going too slow, as if the other lane will go faster. And I've gotten better.
My new game is like, you watch the people do that, and then like in a mile, you're like, oh, they're still right there.
Up to them or,
yeah. I've actually taken that route now, where I've driven the Schuylkill on those roads so much that now I'm like, you know what? If I just stay in this lane, I'm going to end up in the same spot. And then you see
the guy that like did 8 turns, and
you put the marker on a car, right? Yeah.
Well, and where technology
spots
has taken some of the fun away is, you don't know everybody can find the back road now. People can just, you know, aimlessly make wrong turns that the GPS will correct and end up on some back way that they didn't know existed.
You used to have to be a local to know, but you don't anymore.
Right. You know, I mean, Schuylkill specifically, because I lived down there, and you know, like I knew 10 different ways. I could have been like, I was driving on 1-lane roads that people didn't realize it said you shouldn't be on, but it got me home quick.
I do think that that's the benefit of like having learned to drive to places without electronic GPS. Like there's a lot of road construction happening everywhere right now, and the Route 23 just like after, you know, we've all got certain capacities for things, but driving home on Route 23 for me right now is like beyond my capacity. It just irritates me with how chewed up that road is. And so I take a different way. And the other day, actually, I left a few minutes after Aiden, but I beat him home. And he's like, how did you beat me home? And I'm like, I took this other path. He's like, I didn't even know you could go that way. Like, I didn't even know there was a road that could get you home.
Went up Sheep Hill, came back out, did the whole wave around type thing. Yeah.
And but now with GPS, you know, it says like, well, this is the fastest, and this is the least number of turns, and this is the shortest, and
this is tolls.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny, when we talk about that, something really, I'd never really thought about this, and maybe it's like narcissism saying it, but I'm not going to say the generation, but the age of people that grew up having to operate with maps, and then now have the ability to not just GPS, but more importantly for me, the overhead view that my GPS provides of the roads around me with a view of traffic. We might be the most advanced of that, because it's going to, like Aiden or Savannah or Mara are going to learn to drive with the map. They're not going to know all the other ways. They likely won't go too far off of where the map tells them to go. So it almost reminds me of the GPS, that like our best operators are the ones that could do it without the GPS, but were open enough and capable of learning how to utilize the GPS. And now they're just so clean because they knew how to do it. And now they have this technological advance. And I sort of think there's a similarity there with the GPS, that like the GPS, I would argue, might have made me better, because now I can be somewhere I don't know and pull off on that map from a distance and look at it and say like, okay, if we take this, and I'm not on GPS. I'm just using the map
Right,
to be
just
able to
using the map
visually
function. Yeah.
pull back and say like, this is a shortcut I didn't know existed, but this will work.
Yeah, I do that a lot too. I'm like zoom out. And I'm like, okay, these roads all go generally the same direction. I'm
Yeah.
going to get off of this one.
Yeah,
take
Erin
one of the
doesn't like it when
others.
I do that. We haven't talked much about the girls, but
Yeah.
Erin not fond at all. She's like, if you had just stayed on the road, because GPS will adjust.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah, but I made up 5 minutes. And she says, is this worth 5 minutes?
I
And I
hate
was like,
that. Like you
yes.
could save 4 minutes, and like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like,
There's you know how much time, and
Yeah.
even if I didn't save time, we just got to drive through a nicer area with
Right.
no traffic.
Yeah.
I'm in a better mental state from not having to sit on the Schuylkill.
You know, it's
things.
interesting because I actually think I totally agree with what you're saying, but I think that we're likely in the exact same boat, that we are learning things now through some variation of ease and automation that somebody else will have known how to do and will do in the future better, because like I'm certain of it, and I can't even give you an example, but I'm certain that there are skills that our kids are learning now that in the future, and that might not even be that far in the future. It might be 7, 8, 10 years. People will not be learning how to do it anymore, but having known how to do it will make you a better version of that thing. So I think that definitely still exists. And we just look at it from our perspective to say like, well, yeah, but look at all the stuff that we know how to do. And like 10 years from now, we won't know how to do these things. So.
Yeah, but you know how you settle that problem, Ford?
Yeah.
We're just going to go get it's going to have to be mine, because I think you don't have your older car is not a stick. Yours is not a stick.
I have a manual transmission car.
You do have a manual transmission car, and you have one, right?
Yeah.
So you want to equalize that? Let's put them in the manual, no GPS vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
No, we'll just share our cars. We'll even give them the faster one. Whichever one of us has the faster one, we give it to them. I guarantee you they lose to us.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about
because it's just they're not even going to. It's like when you try and tell a kid to use a rotary phone.
But they'll have something. They'll have their version of that thing.
Yeah, they will. You're right, and that's what I'm saying. We don't know what that is,
Right.
Yeah, but I do think that that with this, just like the GPS operator thing, there's going to be a different thing. But in this scenario, the people that didn't know how to do it are at a disadvantage until the baseline is just that you could, do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say 2 things. One way back forward, but every time you talk into your watch, it reminds me of Dick Tracy from I don't know when those whatever those old comics were from. I don't know if they're from the 50s, 60s, whatever. But like someone talking into their watch, like what planet is this on? So like things are moving in that speed.
Yeah.
But I mean, my 3-year-old probably can run my iPhone better than I can, just because she's base knowledge, all that kind of stuff that you're talking about. Yeah. But I think the big thing there is that really is the key part for us as a company and in general. There's still going to be something. We just don't know what it is.
We just don't know. We just got to be ready.
And the cool part is I'm not worried about it because I know it'll be something. We just we can't fret about things. I remember 10 years ago, I went to a couple things with some people and they're all just complaining about the changes, right? Yeah. And I quit. Like it was like a group I was supposed to be part of to help me learn things. And I quit because I was like, complaining is not the solution. I don't have a solution, but I'm going to have to figure one out. And just whining about how it used to be is irrelevant because that's what in the past.
I think a key part of that, it will be us being open to the idea that it's changed. Someone can probably do it better. So let's empower our people to be those folks, or find the right people to continue to push that.
Yeah, 100%. I think long term for me, like as you start to play out for me personally, like 10, 15 years, I will become less valuable of a resource in how we operate the company. And my value will be in like soft skills and my ability to interact with people, because our team already surpasses me in doing almost everything we do. They can estimate better than me. They can project manage better than me. They can run equipment better than me. There's nothing that I do better than them, except at times when the social interaction piece, and that becomes more and more in my job. And I also think when Ford said about the something is, it's one of those things, and I don't know what the saying is or if there is a saying, but in my head it like exists that success is the intersection between opportunity and effort. Like it's the opportunity occurs and you are willing and capable of engaging in a thing that you don't know how to do and that you don't know what it is, but you acknowledge that it's the right thing to do. And every time that's happened, people have succeeded. And that's what the next 20 years is. It's identifying what what is the right change, right? Is it a 3.5-inch hard disk, or is it a 5 1/4 floppy disk? If you pick the wrong one, you have the wrong computer. You know what I mean? Is it
Blu-ray versus DVD?
right?
Yeah,
What is it?
right.
You know what I mean? And identifying that, and you can make the wrong decision, because you make the wrong decision over and over again. You just have
Course
to be willing
correct.
to acknowledge that you made the wrong decision, and then adjust, and then try it again. Because the odds of you don't hit a home run once and then retire. You know what I mean? You could do that, but you're not going to be famous.
Sure.
You're not going to be successful. You're not going to be the best player. The best player is going to strike out a lot of times, but they're going to hit a lot of home runs because they kept trying when they struck out and just tried to fix the mistake. So I think that's the key to the next 20 years for us, is knowing we're going to have to take shots on a bunch of things that we may not fully understand, and we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to keep doing it and try and find the right things and try and keep going and trust that our team, can guide us the right way.
That's a good place to wrap it up, I think. Oddly, we've talked about nothing for much longer than we usually do.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope that you got something from this, and we hope that you come back for another episode.